All right, so yeah, it seems like there's six decks in the format that we have to worry about, which is Makanko, Pure Element, Vanadium, Unchained, Rescue Ace, and Purity. So those are the six decks that define the format, and it feels like Toss, where pick your poison at this point. Everything's pretty fair.
Yeah, but before we dive into the format for people watching for the first time, I think it would be important for us to elaborate on the list that's on the current screen and why it exists the way it does.
Oh, we can talk about that. So the original idea of this deck was for like a regional in LA. It was like a no extra deck thing for Kashtira. Um, and it just so happened that like it kind of was good even after this that format. And to elaborate, long story short, for everyone who's playing Edison right now, this deck reminds me of Hero Beat, which is like a normal summon attack deck with setting trap cards indefinitely. And a lot of it feels like that, where the deck is super simplified. So you can just play simple Yu-Gi-Oh, but everything is meant to be the way it is. Um, so I guess like if you want to talk about the monster lineup, the Labyrinth engine as a whole is like a 12 card engine that kind of accesses really good trap cards, which you'll see in like Compulse, Through Mechan, and Terror Root. As like my battle traps, quote unquote, but they're all chainable at any point. So I wanted to have these are some of the best cards in the format in if you actually play them. But like cards like Ariana and Lady Labyrinth, they're all like generically good plus ones, and the deck just recurs itself and has access to everything. So I feel like it's a little bit better than Eldritch in those cases, where instead of having to top deck a trap, you can always set it off Lady. And then Lord in the Heavenly Prison was another way that like it has access engine and non-engine, but it has the best bomb in the game, which is I think is Card Demise. And Todd, you can elaborate on this one a little bit more if you want.
Yeah, so the way this list is kind of built is you force interactions with your opponent. Like, yeah, we're playing nine floodgates, but to be honest, it's not the floodgates that really like win the game by itself. Most cases, it's the overwhelming advantage that Carta Demise provides off of Lord of the Heavenly Prison. And the reason why I say this because if you've noticed, we can't play Extrav and we can't play Prosperity in the specific list because we have no extra deck, obviously, right? But even in the case of Prosperity, which is arguably the best pot we've ever had in a very long time, it's the fact that you would still need to require those cards in your deck, thus increasing the budget of um, the overall cost of the deck. And if you take even a deep look at the list that we have in front of us here, this deck list is like 150 max. At the lowest rarity possible, you can pick up this entire list for 150, take it to a regional, and do well. And the reason why Cardomize is so well in this list is because drawing three is insane, and then being restricted adding the cards and like losing your hand, that doesn't matter for a trap deck because ideally we're just drawing three and setting three pretty much immediately.
Yeah, and that's the other thing too. For a trap deck, the problem is like you may interact with your opponent, but you run out of trap cards to interact after the turn. So you're relying on floodgates a lot of the time to put you back. But if in the case you don't draw floods, this gives you a chance to draw floods to immediately seal the game. If not, like more normal traps to ensure that you always have gas. And that's the other thing too, right? We're not playing Lovely in this list because that card's literally a brick because you just can't draw it. So Tara Demise was a way that it was searchable off Lord and Heavy Prison, which is your bomb. Like you get to immediately play and win the game.
Yeah, because generally, ideally, you go first with this list. You set anywhere between one to two floodgates and then as many battle traps as possible. And that includes getting into your engine with the Labrynth cards. And there's some really nice niche interactions with this deck with Big Welcome Labyrinth and Lord of the Heavenly Prison that really like puts it. Honestly, Lord just prints cards at this point with this deck because if you're bouncing Big Welcome and your target is Lord, you just declare Lord again, and then suddenly you're setting more battle traps, you're setting floodgates, you're setting judgments, you're setting dualities. Like the advantage Lord provides in tandem with how Big Welcome interacts with targeting one monster that you control and bouncing it is absurd. And no other pot card kind of facilitates that cycle, considering that you're stuck with card demise and pot duality, which is not a negative. In fact, because of the way that interaction works, it outpaces and outgrinds Xtrap and Prosperity.
And there's another thing I want to interact to is like because you're drawing three, a lot of the time wait for resolves, they're usually ashing your welcome traps, which means if you're always drawing three every time, and like so even if your card you don't get access to engine, your lord will always access more engine regardless at some point. If not, like provide a body to keep playing.
And when we're going second and third, I mean, when I mean second and third, when we're in game two and three, post side, a majority of people will Ash a Prosperity because if you dig into a side deck card that's a blowout, they're done. But with this list, no one's gonna ever ask the duality, and more than likely will ask the actual engine, the Labrynth engine themselves, and not the card of demise. And even if they do ask the card of demise, great. Now we have a lovely on field that cannot be targeted or destroyed by card effects, and is also setting cards for free. So it's a strange way of saying pick your poison, but at the same time, there's no winning in that situation if you do not have at least two blowout cards, if not more, to beat this version of the deck.
Yeah, and another thing too is that like unlike the IKEA deck, IKEA requires you to like play perfect every time and know all your matches where to hand trap. While with this list, you can literally set five and break boards, and like it doesn't matter what the strategy is as long as you get to play Yu-Gi-Oh.
Can you elaborate on what it means to break boards with the current lineup we have? Because obviously you look
Yeah,
at Daruma, Terror Roots, and Compulse, and those are pretty generic removals. But what, in my mind at least, is the floodgates that do a majority of the removal most of the time into really established and boards at the current moment.
yeah. So like the idea is like against like a deck like Vanadium where they're just putting up a bunch of negates. You can as long as you understand how to pick apart boards like with interaction, you can force out things, and then one floodgate seals the deal usually. Or like I remember when I played a regional, I let my Vanadium opponent like full combo me, and then I just used like well in the list I played that time I played Ice Dragon's Prison over Daruma, and I would like compulse one thing, Daruma like Ice Dragon's Prison another thing that takes us to negate, and he skill drains. I skill drain him, right? And at this point, my opponent has to invest all his resources to an access code to pop a skill drain. But that meant that like my Labyrinth engine was online to snowball the game. And that's kind of like what the point of the deck is like these floodgates are gonna stay forever as long as no one's playing back removal. And it gives you a winning position a lot of the time, making people scoop it once you draw multiple or flip multiple.
Right, and to touch on the removal, the back row removal in the main deck currently. A lot of the times we see this current flip flop in right before an event, and it's usually do I main deck hand traps or do I main deck board breakers? So think like, oh, should I play Ash Veiler Imperm, which is considered the best hand trap lineup at the current moment, or do I play Thrust with Evenly Lightning Storm Duster? And that that's a gamble we take with this deck every event we go to with it, simply because the idea changes every time because the last YCS before the one that resolved at today in Richmond with the Unchained finals was Rescue Ace finals. But Rescue Ace is not in the finals. It's not the best deck, but it got a huge power boost. And based on the top deck lists we've researched and looked into, this list still operates completely fine. It's just literally player preference at this point on whether or not I'm gonna main deck hand traps to beat Ace or I'm gonna play board breakers to wipe out Ace.
Yeah, and that's the other thing too. Unlike some of the other decks in the format, like I get that hand traps are cool, but they're so dependent on like you drawing them. But with traps, right? You can draw them as your six and set five, and you just they can't interact with you a lot of the time. So when you get to play all your cards in your opponent's turn, they just get blown out.
Right, and I think at this point we can dive a little bit into the side deck. And I think
Right.
generally the consensus is you don't need more of a blowout one of card like Eradicator and why we're not playing other virus cards. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, so I don't know if you noticed for game one, there's three Lone Time Prison and three Solemn Judgment. I know people are randomly playing Feather Duster in their deck or evenly matched. So both those cards kind of make sure that like even if you try to get blown out, like they you still have a chance to win. Um, and when you do the math post side, right, there's three Eradicator, three Huge Revolution is over, and you might want to look at that card a little bit. It just so happens to be a whatchamacallit, answer the lightning storm and feather duster, but it also just so happens to be good versus Unchained going second because they're gonna play escape for your floodgates. But this so happens to negate escape and banish the trap. So if they're just not playing multiple or like three escape, they're just one less card to out you, like in the course of a turn or the game. And so that's 12 cards, right? But that still doesn't. You forget that like Trap Trick and Duality are there post side as well, so that's almost 18 cards to not get blown out game one. So they must have two board breakers to break this deck, which statistically is not happening usually.
Not that you mentioned that, 43 cards. What's the math behind that? Why are we playing 40 cards? Why can't we play a
So
strict 40 like normal people?
So there is a world you can probably play a Trick 40 and just not play Trap Trick. But the issue is that like Trap Trick also is engines because with Labrynth, but also gets you non-engine. So it really when you're just decking the deck regardless, it just doesn't the math doesn't matter. The other thing about that is it's like a deck like Runic or like um in the grand scheme of things, right? So a big win condition I found out game one was Rivalry Dare can, right? If you play a 40 card deck, that means that like you and your opponent are both pretty much even to like play. But when you have this interaction, it's literally Kaiser Coliseum, a card that's been banned forever. So if they can only play one guy, they're just playing like a boxing match with you. It's almost impossible to break unless you have like Feather Dust or Lightning Storm. And I feel like because you're playing that type of strat, it's almost like Mystic Mind, right? You can just deck them out, and that's a win condition.
Yeah, and I think we didn't really get into the history of this list too much, but more recently the Floodgate lineup has changed compared to when Cash was still relevant and running around in the format. Even post Cash, they was still running around a little bit as well. What changed in the Floodgate lineup to incorporate rivalry in this list comparatively to past previous lists?
So the original catch list just played Gozen match, and instead of their kind of Solemn Judgment, I played Solemn Strike and the Drinking Topinor because in that format you had that super heavy and purely. So you just want to negate monster effects immediately so that you can start breaking boards, especially with a Rice Rod in the format. But now that Rice Rod's gone and like there's less purely, you can play more safe with Floodgates. And Solemn Judgments also just so happen that like everyone's just playing Duster in game one, so it gives you another safety net that Strike couldn't do. Also, like just recently when before was it Agent Overlord, there was a lot of Unchained, so like and Flu, right? Because it won Cancun, so there was a bunch of Flu, and I wanted Solemn Judgment instead of Strike because Flu can just chain block Strike.
Right. And in that sense, is there a world post AGOV and post Rarity Collection where we are now, where Strike would have more implication over Judgment, or is there a world where we can drop a Floodgate that is the least impactful in the main deck currently and incorporate both Solemn Judgment and Strike?
All right, so I there is a world that it does exist. Um, so you would have to cut a normal trap, which is something I don't like because I like having nine in rotation, and then it makes it easier post side because you need to have at least two to when you put in something like Huge Rev or a Soul Drain to like keep up with the format. Even like siding patterns with like Crow and Gamma Sales, we'll see. We'll touch on a little bit, but I like Strike because Ace right now doesn't put up a real negate. It's just Baron, and that's like the only thing you have to worry about. And you just blow it up. Even SP Knight's really good too. But I still think because the weaknesses of this deck still matter of you need at least 12 to beat Lightning Storm. And Feather even if when they thrust a prosperity to you, that matters more.
Actually, not that you've mentioned Thrust in this list, I don't think Thrust really resolves. Is there a world where we actually fear that card ever?
Yes, because like a lot of times too, like they're just in some instances you're just forced to activate a monster effect just because you're just in a tight circumstance where you might just die. Um, but if you're just activating floodgates and skill drain, that usually just never happens. Or you just activate all your like welcome chests or like your monster effects during the end phase, and then thrust and talents don't matter. However, I don't like the idea of like them top decking stuff.
Yeah, because in a boxing match, at any given moment, one right hook knocks you out. So
Right,
Thrust
right. So
Thrust is one
like
of those
if we're taking
cards.
that analogy,
Yeah,
yeah, if we're
exactly.
taking that analogy, any moment like you can just get blown out.
And then
which is like the fear of this
speaking of
deck.
blowout cards, Eradicator 3 in this list, and that's mainly as trap trick target, something for lady. Lord can trigger it, but 3 is a blowout ender
Yeah,
card, and everyone feels some type of way with blowout cards, especially like this. Um, is there a world where we never play Eradicator anymore simply because um, the format has diversified so much where it's risky to activate?
yeah. So I don't like that idea because also like if the world right now is you can literally take out huge rev and probably play strike just because going second is just better. However, like I said, I don't like I just, in this I post that it's literally just a numbers game, bro. Because I've been in that situation before when I played no outs or barely any outs, and game one I just don't respect Duster, and I got blown out before I had a regional, just at round eight, like in a cash in a format where every combo decks exist, people will just randomly main it because of variance.
Gotcha, gotcha. And then ideally, there's certain matchups we just kind of throw it in there because it's obvious, like for example, Runic or Infernoble or Mekonko, because those decks need those spells to play. Not even just having blowouts in general, but sometimes having
Even like
those
a deck
spells
like
into play.
Ace or like
Yeah,
yeah, even like a deck like Ace Unchained, like it literally is meant to check Prosperity, Thrust, Lightning Storm, Buster, so they can have less cards to engine. They better have the nuts at that point.
and generally with a test hand, I'll showcase that near the end of our conversation here, while we're going through the side deck right now. I know we're jumping all over the place, but I'm trying to follow the flow of conversation here generally. Um, I lost my train of thought in questioning here, but
Yeah, we can actually go to the rest of the
ideally,
side deck.
yeah, ideally, if you knock out one or two power spells out of their hand, they only have three cards to play, and you'll have an empty board more than likely, but you still have four back row. And if those three cards can't answer three back row, then you just lose.
Yeah, that was just like that just happens sometimes, but like it is Yu-Gi-Oh at that point. It's just a risk you have to take. But a lot of times with if like I said, if you have huge red Trojan or like Lord, you don't have to eradicate it right away. And then the nice thing is if they say enter battle at that point, that's when you can shotgun Eradicator and get away with it.
Yeah, but I like this idea of like, oh, they're telegraphing the play, but I feel like a lot of top level players nowadays kind of bluff the battle phase and as a check to see if you have an answer. How do we get around that as an obstacle?
So a lot of the time, what I like to do, right? If they're playing more so a spell deck, you let them enter battle, and you just activate everything to eradicate them. And assuming that like you can probably call spells, and you call a lot, and if they evenly you, a lot of the time you have like judgment or prison to like, you know, get you back in the game.
Got it, got it. Soul Drain. I think this one's pretty obvious. I think this is more geared towards the rogue graveyard decks, even though tier kind of exists in the format, and there's a lot of decks that kind of like auto lose to Soul Drain. Why are we not maining this card?
So the problem with right now this format that we're in, if you look, I told you the six decks. Just
Right.
even if the six decks aren't checked, there's just 20 playable decks, bro. Like as much as I want to main that card for just Unchained and then knowing that this white case just happened, um after playing a lot of Ace, I just realized that like the rivalry is too good when like tier and Ace are in the format. It's like, even Makonko too to some extent and Vanadium.
Got it. And then
Yeah.
kaijus. What's outside of purely like what are we really kaijuing in this format? The
So
STA, the
like
Baron, like what are we hitting?
yeah, so a lot of the time you want to hit negate, so like Baron's one, and then the Vanadium deck, right? It's just one more card you need to one more negate you can like less the answer, so you can flip a flood and it resolves. Another thing was like for purely just because it's the safest thing that you're just giving them a monster and just floodgate them and this can't summon a monster.
And how do we deal with quick play spells in that event?
Oh, give some examples, right?
So you kaiju, you pass priority to your opponent, and then they quick play spell before you chain your floodgate.
Oh, we're talking about like Twin Twister, like stuff, cosmic stuff like that, right?
Yeah, yeah. In the event there's something chainable to your cards.
And if that's the case, like sometimes like we're not like our obviously eradicator is meant for like the normal spells. We can't really play around it. That's like, the only thing, and all the time like if it's cosmic, it's one for one-ing. It's not that big of a deal, and like usually there's something like Lord in the Heavenly Prison like gains all your advantage back.
Gotcha. And then lastly, DD Crow. Comparatively to other hand traps, why is DD Crow here and why does it exist?
So Crow, I that could be Ash, that could be Veiler, it could be Droll Mockbird, a lot of things. I feel like Crow hitting cards instead of not just monsters is super crucial in a lot of like the format. And it's mainly was purely just because you just hit stuff up purely, and like that was their one thing, right? So they can't like rank up for the rest of that turn if it's like unless it's like purely itself. It's also good for tier. It's also good for Unchained. It's good. It's good in a lot of things if you understand your matchup knowledge, and
Right.
it makes it force resources rather than having to prevent stuff from happening. Like you want them to commit as much as possible rather than preventing stuff from happening. If that makes any sense.
Right. I feel like we've elaborated on all the choices side deck at this point. How about we do some test hands? What do you think?
Oh, crazy, bro! That's what I like to see.
All right, let's hop into solitaire real quick. And yes, the deck name's the truth. Here we are. So opening hand. How do we feel about this hand, Danny?
It's not bad. You're not dying immediately because you have trap trick, right? So you can have like two forms of interruption. Um, it for booking whilst you're going first is really good. It just sucks versus like decks like Unchained and Manadia when they can pop their cards to keep going. But that's a concession we have to make. And when you're playing decks like this, it just so happens to be okay versus the towers decks too, because like those towers decks are crazy.
Yeah, and I think this is just one of the inherent weaknesses of trap decks in general. Sometimes you can still open crazy tr good one of traps. Like for example, if you had a full hand of like let's say one Compulse, one Terror Roots, one Trap Tricks, one Welcome, and then Ariana, right? That's a
Yeah,
pretty average hand, but it's there's no floodgates. There's no like punching your opponent out at that point. You just have
yeah,
to sequence your cards correctly. And a lot of the
yeah,
times that's where you wish you had Lord in hand to set card demise because cool, you played through everything, your board's still weak. I activate card demise, I draw for turn. Like I have four cards and suddenly I'm back in turn one again. It gets
yeah,
hard to navigate after that point, and that's the concession we made with this current list.
yeah. So we can test another hand to see where this goes.
Got it. Let's do it. All right.
Okay, these hands are crazy.
This hand's absurd. This hand generally going first should win the game. Ariana gets into engine, compults, triggers lady, rivalry is just insane. You have Lord to set card demise. And I think this is where the discussion where rivalry kind of comes into place is like where you choose your poison. Would you rather have the card advantage with Lord and card demise, or would you rather have Lady setting infinite amount of normal traps? And that's why I kind of asked about rivalry earlier in the conversation, where I was like, "Huh, is rivalry really it when it kind of hurts us in some capacity as well?"
And that's something that like I want to think about old Yu-Gi-Oh, like stuff like Edison, where you play conflicting cards anyway. You kind of have to roll with it, and like it's just like a bunch of experience where you get to make a decision on the spot.
Got it. But this hand overall, this is what we're
Very,
ideally
very good.
looking for. Anywhere between one to two floodgates and a lord. That I think that's
Yeah,
the general idea because at that point it does not matter what the rest of the trap cards are because based on the cards we're currently playing, three Trap Trick, three Big Welcome, three Regular Welcome, three Lady, three Ariana, three Pot of Duality, three Card of Demise, you're gonna get to Engine eventually.
yeah. Like that's another thing too. It's just Yu-Gi-Oh at that point. Like the statistics are in your favor a lot of the time if you know how to manage.
Yeah, exactly. And this is again, this is one of those great examples of what I would consider the Exodia hand, where you have access to Lord, you have access to Engine, you have a way to trigger Lady if you need to. Judgment is just an insane card overall, and a floodgate to stop your opponent.
Yeah.
Let's do another hand.
Oh my god, this is absurd.
Again, another absurd hand where Skill Drain TC Boo just takes us there. Trap Trick gets us into Engine, Compulse makes it so Lady can interact on our opponent's turn as well as set a different card. And Judgment, of course, insane game one as always. What's
Yeah.
that? That's three hands so far.
Yeah, that's like a lot of the time with this deck, you'll draw like any five, and everything's usually manageable. Like you can test another one.
Yeah, let's do five hands and then let's jump into siding patterns.
Sure.
So hand four.
So this is like kind of unfortunate, just because you're open two bricks that you don't want to draw, but like those games you just fold. Because a
Actually,
lot of the time they just open broken. It's manageable.
yeah, yeah. In the perfect world, this is technically playable, but you're banking on the fact that your opponent also hard bricked.
Yeah, like it's not usually okay if you're playing against first the combo or like all the combo decks at the moment.
Yeah, you just kind of have to concede, and sometimes you play out a turn just to see where the match is headed, and I think it's okay to scoop at this point when you
Yeah.
know you can't win quickly or efficiently enough. And then,
Oh, that's another thing I want to say too. If you do another hand,
yeah, let's do
it's
another
the
hand.
deck count philosophy. Um,
Top
so
tier.
oh, that's pretty good. So if you duality here, we'll see what happens. You can choose and pick.
Yeah, let's play properly. Stand by main. Duality. Nobody's asking duality because it's duality. Let's check our three cards. Oh, would you look at that?
Oh, look, so this is a hand where you might just not want to pick card itemize because you have the Lord already. So you can probably just get another compulse for removal. Because I just feel like at least like 80 to 90% of the time, no one's making Feather Duster. So this is like okay. Um, and there's another thing, right? So a lot of the time with these type of lists, the trap cards, like when they clump up, which is why we're playing at 43 to diversify your hands. That was another big thing on my deck building, where even if you play 40, drawing two ofs is just not okay. You want to be able to draw one of each thing and make everything live as much as possible.
Right. So now that we've touched on that, let's talk siding patterns because we do have an awkward number of cards. 43 is not standard. Generally, we see 40, 45, 50, 60, but 43 is a very unique number and let's talk siding patterns real quick.
All right, so a lot of time when you go first, so three Erad and three huge have come in immediately. Right, and a lot of the time it's because everyone's playing like removal, right? Like so, and especially since it's like a hard trap deck, so like a lot of people playing Lightning Storm, or like evenly matched, right? So luckily, because we both play Rivalry and their can, it gives us a 50-50 chance to figure out what they're playing, and we either side out the appropriate one.
Okay. Let's throw a hard matchup if we're siding into, let's say we're siding into Unchained. What comes in, what comes
Like,
out if
oh,
hypothetically
so
game one goes our way?
luckily for this matchup, Rivalry is terrible. Everything's a fiend, so we take that out. Um, so here I would take out Daruma because even if you book a Boston, they can still have Shabara or like a Ruha, right? So let's discard it. We can side that out, right?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that last part?
Swap. We can swap that out.
Yeah, we can swap now. Okay.
Okay. So the other card I want to mention is Soul Drain, and that's a card where you can play in Verse Unchained because it's a graveyard deck. So for me, I'd probably take out Terror Root. I know that seems odd, but like you're basically you play any two floodgates versus Unchained with this lineup, and they just get FTK'd.
Yeah, because to go back to the boxing match analogy, right? No monster effects, and you're stuck with that one fiend you summon. That one fiend you summon does not beat Lady, and it does not beat Rock by itself.
Right, and then the other thing too, right? Like you're bidding them on like the idea of Kaiser Coliseum when it's only one dude, and another thing, even if you side Soldiering going second, when you flip their can, at the moment like they put stuff to grave, they just like stuff like Caesar's not triggering, so it's like almost crazy. It's almost unplayable for them.
So that's nine cards post side. Is there any more that would be beneficial for this matchup? Because I'm looking at
No,
Lady Crow as a good option as well. How do you feel about that?
no, because in a chapter deck like this, it's not necessarily a combo deck when you go first. It's more like feel the game going second, setting five against Unchained, and you'll see what post side if we do some test hands right now.
Yeah, yeah. Let's do 5 hands post side as well, just to show you guys how the math works with 43. So, did I swap properly? I did.
Yeah, you're
Okay,
good. So
great.
against Unchained, this is outrageous.
They can't
Because like,
play.
look, you're gonna they literally can't play Yu-Gi-Oh.
They like legitimately cannot play because Lord will generate the advantage. There's two TC boos, and just in case they somehow force the Lord out of our hand to summon, we still have huge rep. Trap trick gets us in the engine regardless.
Yeah.
So
So and then the other thing too, like their can's really good because the Rock and Lady is fits under the restriction, so you always get to play.
and dropping 6k damage on a board where your opponent cannot play, you're gonna win pretty quickly.
Yeah. And also Lord by itself just revealed like they just can't like pop the traps with the Unchained card, so it's like a legit FTK.
Yeah, this was literally the perfect hand. Almost if this was something else, maybe if this was engine or if this was a Ariana or a welcome card, I think
Or
this would be
yeah,
considered an Exodia hand. So that's hand
yeah.
one.
So.
Let's do another hand. Let's do. Oh, I almost misclicked there. Insane, right?
Oh my god, that's still FTK.
This is the FTK hand we were talking about.
Again, like you have a lot more. Like this is like the like variety of hands is what you want in a 42 card deck rather than 40.
Right. All right. This is Exodia. Don't need to explain further. Let's do 3 more hands. Let's see what happens. How do we feel about
That's
this one?
still good. One duality can change a lot. So let's see.
Yeah, yeah. Let's properly resolve the duality. See what we grab. Jesus Christ.
So you should add skill drain. This is like the
Yeah,
perfect example.
I think this one's pretty clear. Considering we do have 2 lords in our hand, I don't think huge ref will really come into play. Especially when we have Lord and Judgment backing us up. I feel different about the duality. Maybe if our hand was really, really obnoxiously bad, maybe we grab duality here. Or if we open the skill drain, we grab duality here. But in this scenario specifically, the play is definitely skill drain.
And
And
like the
now,
nice thing is like on so like in the standby phase, right? Once you have Lord revealed, you can just sub skill drain and then set and immediately just activate it. Activate Lord set demise and then immediately eradicate them to check their hand.
yeah, which is actually insane because now that you ripped cards out of their hand, they have to deal with the 3k body under skill drain and a judgment. I don't think any
Yeah,
deck currently drops a 3k body under skill drain and beats a solemn judgment.
yeah, like it's impossible. And then especially with demise, like you're drawing three, so it's like, or at least maybe drawing two, which is like usually enough.
Yeah, we'd be drawing 2 in this case, so pretty solid hand. It's not Exodia, but it's still pretty good.
Yeah, you get to always play Yu-Gi-Oh, which is like the most important thing.
This is hand number 4 post side.
Again, another FTK hand.
Yeah, and then this is the interaction I was talking about because you summon Lord resolves. Now it's just a 3k body. However, big welcome gives you Lord back, which is absurd. We have
Yeah,
Eradicator to check. We have Skill Drain TC Boo. Like this, the nuts. We did it. This is everything you could ever ask for. And
yeah.
then I think this is the last hand we do post side.
Oh,
Jeez.
generally another great hand.
Yeah,
Because you have so you big welcome for lady specialist eradicator them check their hand and then the last chapter could just be welcome labyrinth to summon a lady again.
beautiful. This is exactly what we want. And it's under skill drain, so have fun playing. Great. Now that we've done 5 dance, let's go back to side and then let's go ahead and reset the deck real quick. Let's say we lose game 1 because we did not win the roll and it's still unchained.
Sure.
How would we decide now?
You lose game one going first you still had the same.
You still side the same,
It
right?
was the same,
It's still
but
the
like
same.
it was still but like let's just say, and even if you side going second it's still the same.
Really, even though I feel like Eradicator would be dead
So
going second, no?
no, so like you would, so in this case, instead of having judge, well, you even I think judgment's okay going second in this case because they're trying to like break your floods with escape, so I think that's okay. I think the only change was you would side kaijus over duality.
Kaiju's over duel because of the confliction, right?
But yeah, well, not even the confliction. It's just the unchained trap. You need to have an unchained monster, right? So if you just try to do the rage, right? They can't activate it. You all have to do is a Caesar. You just slip a skill drain or like a dare can, and they just can't play.
And that's where like the sequencing really comes into play because obviously you're not gonna blind skill drain into the Caesar. You're gonna check
Yeah, like
other ways
yeah,
because and that's where the
yeah.
9 trap later
So
comes into play where you're gonna terror roost, they change Caesar, and then you change skill drain, and then suddenly you're controlling the momentum of the game.
right. So a lot of the time, like what I do, a lot of people will scoop game one because they just can't answer floods, and then because you're up, you silence like all these random scoring second cards, or if not, like a good going first or second, depending on their game plan. And because you know the board already, generally, you always get to set five and blow them out.
Right. So let's say hypothetically we're against a rogue deck that we've never seen before. I'm gonna throw. Let's say we're against Morenses. Siding pattern would
Princess, okay.
generally be the same, right?
So kind of. So going second, it's kind of interesting because I think that deck has graveyard effects, right?
Yes.
Okay, so I would side Kaiju's over Duality because it's good. The deck is a Towers deck.
And swap.
Yeah. So here, um, I feel like if you are against Marine Cess, Crow's good because there's some point they have to reborn their monster or like equip the a link, right?
Yes.
I'd probably side out Judgment.
Really. My gut reaction is
Be-
rivalry.
Soul Drain is going to be taking out for Ravelry in this
Oh, okay,
case.
so this is the 9 for this particular matchup.
Yeah. Because a lot of the time too, like you need them to stop, and like I think when they like I generally like when a deck like Marine Test goes first, they're not going to decide in spawn trap removal because they think they're slick.
Can you, what is
And
that supposed to
now
mean?
like they're just not prepping for that if that makes any sense. They would need like they should be citing Cosmic or Twin Twister. Twin Twister is a little bit more unrealistic, but mainly Cosmic is more reasonable. Um, so another thing you could probably do because they're kind of a spell deck is Eradicator, and you could probably take out Terror Root.
And then Terra Root for
Eradicator.
Eradicators.
Eradicator. Because at some point in the game, right, they're just gonna be top decking, and that's where you want to check for like thrust and storm and stuff like that. Maybe just thrust for Duster. But a lot of their engine spells are engine cards are spells.
Right. So post side,
Like,
let's take a look. Nice.
oh my god, this is insane!
Nice. I would consider this
Hey,
an Exodia hand going second.
you had either Daruba or a Kaiju to kill the tower's monsters, and you can just eradicate them.
I'm curious. I don't know this exact ruling. If they have equipped monsters, say we don't open a kaiju, right? What happens if you
Yeah,
eradicate them?
you eradicated them, they still go to grave because they're considered spells.
There's considered spells. Okay, that's good to know. Good to know. And then that's why we play this card. All right, let's do another hand. Nice.
Oh, this is so good. So like a nice thing about this hand was like you had three cards to engine and you had a flood you had their can, right? So a lot of the time with eight so like their towers monsters needs the field spell to be a towers monsters, right? So if you just eradicated the field spell, you're fine. You get to play you and then they're under their can, they just can't move.
Actually, I made a mistake in the previous hand that I didn't do is that we didn't draw for turn because they're going first and
Alright.
second hypothetically,
Oh, this is even crazier.
and the hand got improved.
Yeah. So like you know what I'm saying? Like it just so happened to like I'm saying like sometimes Eradicator going second is fine because once you have engine, one lady can like be tributed as long as you get to live the next couple of turns. The investment that you made doesn't matter, especially since you're looking at three cards in their hand. The next three turns.
Right, right. Let's do what, 3 more, and
Yeah,
I'll be
sure.
sure to draw a card this time. Oh, looks slightly more unfortunate considering we only play 9 monsters and 4 of them in our hand. But TCB kind of takes us there sometimes.
Yeah, that's another thing too. Another thing about this hand, I don't know if you noticed, was a lot of the times you can just go second, no summon Ariana, and then summon have a lady up, a special lady because you just didn't open duality, and that's like the better version of going second is that you can attempt to like put monsters down, set your cards first, then summon lady, and then activate Lord, and then you can go from there.
Nice. So even unplayable looking hands are very playable if you just sequence properly. And that's
Yeah,
a
so
good
that's
thing
like the
to know.
big thing about this deck. Yeah, that's the thing about this deck, right? Not everyone can sequence, but once you like play the deck a lot more, you'll see like oh, there's different ways to play.
And I want to touch on this now that it's actually in our hand. And I was kind of hoping this scenario would come up at some point. Big welcome TC Boo, hypothetically, right? So, um, say we play our turn and we have Lord revealed. We have TC Boo activated, right? Oh,
Yeah.
can you elaborate on how Big Welcome elaborates with this board specifically?
So you can't even attempt to activate it because
Right.
like at this point, right? Because you already have a fiend up and a rock, and even if you quote unquote try to summon a monster, there can just checks making sure that you only can play one.
So even with Big Welcome fully resolving, and then you would still end up with one, it is still an illegal activation.
It's a legal activation, right? So this is what I mean by like you must understand your deck's like interactions. Like you need to be able to sequence your cards properly to get full value, and not everyone can do that. You get to play a lot to know.
Right. Excellent. Excellent. I think this is the last hand, right?
Yeah.
Last hand. We're
Well, so
winning
this
this.
is cool, right?
We're winning
So,
this
so this
trade.
is cool because you have Crow. If you study the Marita deck long enough, you'll probably figure out a way to Crow something that's super valuable. And maybe they don't end on like the full towers, but that's what Daruma's for, right? In this case, where even if they try to do it, your Daruma for sure checks it.
Right, and then I think I can answer that. I think the card you hit for Morensis is usually dive because that is their broken spell, and we didn't open Eradicator even though we have access to it with Lady.
Right. So again, like this is what I mean by you need to know matchup knowledge really well. As long as you understand interaction and what their opponent's line of play, there's always some point where Crow is going to be good, and once you hit it, it might be game breaking, might be not. But that's what the other cards are for. You want to at least you want to lessen the board as much as possible for all your trap cards to be more valuable.
And in this particular hand, actually, I forgot to draw a card. Now that I'm looking at it, with this particular hand, card demise. How do we feel about activating it this turn if we can't trigger Lady right away? Do we just hold it? How are we sequencing card
So
demise?
it's up to your discretion whether or not like how big your hand is at this point or like how much they invested. You kind of make a read. If you feel that you want to draw cards, by all means, you can do it. It's just that your lady just goes to the grave and you kind of just want a big welcome. But then again, like that's what welcome labyrinth's for already at this point, where you're gonna get back that lady, or like summon an Ariana to get a big welcome to get back that lady the next couple of turns. So you just gonna have to telegraph what's going on.
Gotcha. And I think we've talked enough about what we're currently doing with this version of Labyrinth. Do you have any final closing thoughts regarding this?
I think it's a good deck if you are well versed into the format or just in Yu-Gi-Oh in general because this rewards you for perfect play. And it just so happens that because it's a slower deck, especially with like the labyrinth engine in general, you can a better player will be able to forecast reads if and wait whatever to set based on the matchup knowledge that you know. So if you can think ahead a couple of turns, some of these trap cards are game breaking.
All right, cool. Any shout outs, Daniel?
Yo, shout out to East Lancaster, bro. Oh my god,
That's what's up.
that team is
That's what's up.
crazy.
That's what I wanted to hear. East Side Antics. What do you know? All right, thank you, Daniel. We've talked for almost 45 minutes, about to cross the 40-minute mark. It is also almost midnight, but I appreciate you sitting down, talking to me about Labyrinth and why this is the truth.
Oh, you're welcome, dude. Anytime.
All right, awesome. Thank you, guys.